The party that cried for 4 years that Donald Trump is a fascist is now using the military to intimidate people like you and me. I'm going to ask the question that every Republican is thinking, but has been too afraid to ask. What is even the point of us having a military anymore? The reason I ask this question is because it seems like the military no longer serves to protect and defend the Constitution. The military serves to protect the Democrat Party and their woke ideology. The institution that we've been told for centuries has fought for our freedom has now turned our soldiers into pawns to fight for their communist agenda, and it doesn't seem like our leaders in Washington, D.C. have any interest in taking our armed forces seriously. We went from having the most elite military force that once flexed its might in 2 world wars to literal social justice warriors that want to turn our soldiers into promiscuous, gender-fluid communists.
It begins in California, with a little girl raised by 2 moms. Although I had a fairly typical childhood, I also marched for equality. I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age, but she tapped into my family's pride, eventually standing at the altar to marry my other mom. With such powerful role models, I finished high school at the top of my class, and after meeting with an Army recruiter, I found it. A way to prove my inner strength, and maybe shatter some stereotypes along the way.
Wow, what strong woman wouldn't want to join the Army and kiss girls after seeing that? And oddly, these anti-fascist heroes not only want our military to have complete allegiance to our dear leader, but also want enlistment to be based on race, which sounds a lot like what this really bad dude in Germany once did. This latest story that's been breaking the news this week has been just the tip of the iceberg. Just a few days ago, a lieutenant colonel in the Space Force blew the whistle on the increased prevalence of Marxist ideology being pushed by the US military. And guess what happened to him? He got fired. The story just broke on military.com on May 15th, and his termination probably proves him right. Before I dive more into this, I wanted to remind you guys real quick that for just $5 a month, you can gain access to my private Facebook group when you sign up at patreon.com/CaitlinBennett, or receive other cool perks such as autographed photos in the mail from yours truly. The story from military.com starts, a commander of a U.S. Space Force unit tasked with detecting ballistic missile launches has been fired for comments made during a podcast promoting his new book, which claims Marxist ideologies are becoming prevalent in the U.S. military. Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer, commander of 11th Space Warning Squadron at Buckley Air Force Base, Colorado, was relieved from his post Friday by Lieutenant General Stephen Whitting, the head of Space Operations Command, over a loss of confidence in his ability to lead, military.com has exclusively learned. The article goes on. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin on February 5th ordered all military services to observe one-day stand-down on extremism in the ranks. As part of his stand-down, Lohmeyer said he was given a booklet that cited the Jan 6 riot as an example of extremism, but did not mention the civil disobedience and destruction of property that took place following the death of George Floyd. Lohmeyer also accused the Pentagon press secretary of saying that there are too many white pilots. How is that not racist? Can you imagine if he was being accused of saying there are too many black pilots? But because they say it about white pilots, that makes it a-okay. For the military to even look at their ranks in terms of color and not in terms of who can do the best job at defending our nation when it comes under attack is so disgusting and disrespectful to all the soldiers who have died on the battlefield, and a huge slap in the face to the taxpayers who just want the military to be able to protect our country. But clearly, that's not what the military is for anymore. The fact that this line of thinking is penetrating our military should frighten all of you. And I have a lot that I want to say about this, but as you know, I'm very limited with what I can say here on social media, so head on over to libertyhangout.tv if you want to see my full, uncensored opinions about this, along with hundreds of other episodes where I talk about topics too spicy for YouTube. The article continues, the beginning chapters of his book explore the history and foundation of the US and how critical race theory, a study of how race and racism impact or are impacted by social and economic power structures and institutions, plays a role. The diversity, inclusion, and equity industry and the trainings we are receiving in the military is rooted in critical race theory, which is rooted in Marxism, Lohmeyer said, adding it should be seen as a warning sign. So the types of lessons your kids are receiving in school about how white people need to feel ashamed of their heritage and pay reparations for crimes they never committed are now being taught to the military? Why does this have any place on the battlefield? How is that supposed to help them do their job? Unless, of course, their job is now to view people like us as their enemies instead of actual terrorists. And that's why all of this is so freaky. Critical race theory contributes nothing to their jobs unless it becomes part of their job. The story concludes, leaders may be afraid if they don't get on board with diversity training, they will face scrutiny or might not get promoted, he said, adding that liberal ideas are welcomed, whereas ideas from more conservative voices are criticized or silenced. And what's sad about this entire situation is that conservatives are the ones who support the military, and yet they're the ones either being told they have no place or that they have to be silent. But the bigger implication of this story is something that we already knew before this whistleblower even came out. And that is that the police and the military no longer serve to protect you, but to intimidate and persecute you for disagreeing with Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi. The party that cried for 4 years that Donald Trump is a fascist is now using the military to intimidate people like you and me. It's been 4 months since January, and the National Guard is still in Washington, D.C. to try and scare Trump supporters out of coming to the city. And Democrats are trying to make their occupation permanent. I don't know about you guys, but I'm old enough to remember when the Democrats called Trump a dictator for requesting the National Guard in D.C. for a few days when Black Lives Matter was burning churches, tearing down statues, and attacking Secret Service in front of the White House. But hey, now that it's this guy that's the president,
and the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight and then watch the hair come back up again.
A permanent military dictatorship is cool and progressive. And while we're on the topic of the seriousness of the military, remember when the Army lowered their fitness standards to help more women make it into the military? And conservatives criticized this for being goofy? Well, now that it's been 7 months since they rolled out their new standards, let's check back in for an update to see how the ladies have been doing. Nearly half of female soldiers still failing new Army fitness tests, while males pass easily. So I guess lowering their standards didn't help that much. But I also love how this demonstrates that men and women are clearly different, contrary to what the military will probably soon teach their soldiers. But hey, who cares about standards when the few women who do make it through boot camp can now have ponytails, nail polish, and earrings? I love it. That is so progressive. But until the military lets men have ponytails, nail polish, and earrings, I'm just going to assume that they're bigoted and transphobic. And those are the worst things to be. If any military generals are watching this, please do that. It will definitely make our military be taken more seriously by our enemies. They'll be quivering in their boots when they see our brave men running at them in high heels on the battlefield. So now that we've covered all that, I want to ask the same question I did in the beginning. What is even the point of us having a military anymore? So long as the Democrats are in power, it will never be the same military you've known and loved. It will never merit the same respect that our troops of old used to. It's sad to have to admit, but not only is our country gone, but so are the institutions we once held sacred. As you guys can see, as I promised you, we were back out on the road, doing interviews, talking to people, but I need you guys to support me at patreon.com/CaitlinBennett for travel expenses, security costs, and just be able to bring you awesome content. You can support my work there, patreon.com/CaitlinBennett. Go to libertyhangout.tv right now to watch Caitlin Bennett Uncensored. Not only will you get to watch exclusive content from me, but you'll get to say you stood for the truth, you stood against radical leftism, and you stood up for America.